Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I start, I want to make a comment on the enormous tragedy that took place several weeks ago. And that is, of course, the savagery of Ishmael against really four. Obviously, these people were really elevated people. You know, I mean, obviously, they were clearly korbanos. You know, there's no such thing as Jews dying, not in this way, unless they serve some purpose. They're korbanos. The Bonsham, what's called, demanded his due, or whatever that means, whether it be as a kapar for Klal Yisrael, to reduce the kitrugim, the prosecutions against Klal Yisrael, warnings, and there's a whole host of things, you know. But I wanted to mention something which I think is very important. That is, the mourning that took place, which, is still, people are in shock in Har Nof. The mourning that took place clearly is against individuals, four individuals. And even that Druze guy who really died on Kiddush Hashem, he died protecting Jews. I mean, that's a tremendous aliyah for a neshama of a goy, or nefesh of a goy. There's no question about that. But all of this has tremendous repercussions. So there's no question that there was a tremendous loss for individuals. There's also a tremendous loss for a community. Har Nof, the whole community is besides themselves because obviously they were very harsh people. And of course, besides that, there's a tremendous loss to their families and the Yisomim. I think you have 24, 25 Yisomim, which is unbelievable. And then there's a tremendous loss to Klal Yisrael. But there's a loss to something else that I don't think most people either think about or maybe not even realize. But they don't think about this. I want to mention this, but it's Kedai to mention. And that is that, does the Russian really want to do this? No. The Russian wants to bring a tikkun to the Bria. He wants to rectify creation. We know that. Tikkun. That's his major goal, obviously, I once mentioned, a long time ago, which I'm sure everybody's aware, is that the process of tikkun has one of three methods. You can either do the tikkun of the Bria, which is the rectified creation, which essentially means to bring God back into creation, either through mitzvahs, which is commandments, right? Or tshuva, which is repentance. If a person sinned, he does tshuva, and then of course he does the tikkun that way. But if those two things are not happening, then the Rebbeinu Shalom provided a third path, which is Yisurin, which is suffering. As I mentioned quite a while, many times Yisurin is not a compensation or a restitution. What Yisurin fundamentally is for the Jewish people is that it is a form of tikkun. That's really what it is. Now, the Russian, of course, would rather do the tikkun through mitzvahs. No question about that. But we know in the Gemara in Brochus, in the beginning, it says with the Russian, there's a whole story where somebody went into a churva, a desolate place, and the Eliyahu Novi spoke to him, and then he asked him, "Did you hear anything?" So he said, "Yes, I heard a very soft, I heard a voice that, and I heard it 3 times a day, which is incredible, saying, 'Oili, woe is me, that I have destroyed my house, I have destroyed my heichal, my chambers, and I have exiled my people to the Umas Oilam, to the nations of the world.'" What is that? What does it mean? First, the concept of 3 times a day. Why 3? Well, to me that appears that it's a committed direction. You hear 3 times a day, which means that the Russian has committed to this action. But what's more important is that what type of action has he committed? Well, what the Russian has decided that the major emphasis on the tikkun of the Bria, the rectification of creation, will not come about through mitzvahs or tshuva because of the sins of the Jewish people. it will come about through Yisurim. And for the Rebbe to feel that, Kaviyachol, is beyond belief. The expression of grief that God declares is in many ways incomprehensible to us. But really what God is expressing is grief. Unbelievable sadness, despair, and grief in divine terms. That's really what it is. Not only Moshe experiences grief, but we say Kaviyachol. But what he is really experiencing is an unbelievable sort of feelings of unbelievable despair, sadness, depression, or whatever. And that's what the Gemara says. In other words, it's not the sadness most people learn that Gemara is that the Moshe has a tremendous amount of grief. That what? That he destroyed his house, the Heichal, he exiled his people. That's not really what that Gemara is saying. The expression of grief of the Rebbeinu Shalom is that he has now emphasized, or he has now chosen the path of tremendous Yisurim in all its myriad forms. We're talking about Golus, persecutions, inquisitions, pogroms, Holocaust, expulsions, crusades, you name it. That's all the third method of tikkun. That he has now chosen that is the essential path. That's the grief. And that in many ways goes connected three things which are essential to God's character. One, he calls us children. You are my children. So this is a father acting this way to his kids. It's unbelievable. Then the Baruch says, that God loves us. Even if we are not his kids, we didn't relate to him as kids, children. But even if he loved us, right? He is now acting against the love that he has toward us. That's what it would seem. And the third thing is emes. The Baruch is truth. And what he has done is he has buried the ability of the Jew to work on himself. That's what Golus is, where a person cannot really be what he could be. And not only that, the Torah itself is in Golus. The Shekhinah is in Golus. Klal Yisrael is in Golus. And Eretz Yisrael is in Golus. Where's the emes? Where's the truth of the real stature of these four elements? So when you think about it, the expression of enormous grief that the Baruch is exhibiting really is that he has to now deny himself his essential attributes, that we are his children, he loves us, and that he is the essence of God is emes, Hashem Lokechem emes. That he now has to submerge all that to what? To this terrible decree of Yisurim. And Yisurim has many, many forms. It's the goals of all these four that I mentioned. It's persecutions which are incredible and so on. So therefore, if you think about it, the fact that the Russian had to take away in such a brutal manner these four people that died in Har Nof, it was people should cry for him. It's not only crying for the families and the children, the Yisraelim, right? And also for the individuals and clients from the community and so on, right? But it's also crying for the Rebbeinu himself. Imagine when a father has to kill his kids that way, where he has to deny himself, right? This type of pleasure, and so on. But you don't find people thinking that way. They think of the people, which of course is natural. But the greatest of all the grief is that the Marshal himself is aggrieved at what he has to do in order to achieve the tikkun. It's a different slant. It's a whole different perspective. That's the whole concept of tikkun chatzos. People get up in the middle of the night, chatzos, to do what? What's the problem here? The problem isn't the fact that we are persecuted. That's bad enough. Or that we're in Golus, and we had the Torah in Golus, and God is in Golus, right? And all in Eretz Yisrael is in Golus, you know. But the problem is that the Rebbeinu Shalom is in Golus, that he has to act in a way which is so contrary to his nature or to what he really is, right? That's the greatest grief of all, and that is expressed in Tikkun Chatzos. Shechina Bigalusa, that you cry for the Shechina, that the sins of Klal Yisrael are so great that it demands that the Moshe act this way in order to save us, to do the tikkun of the Bria. It's a whole different perspective. But people don't realize that it's that the Moshe did it for his din. Yeah, of course there were dinim. There was infinite cheshbonos for this. But in the end, he is aggrieved that he has to go against his incredible nature to do this unbelievable act of brutality by these behemoths that call themselves humans. You see, that is a very important idea. What would the Geula be? The Geula is the reverse of this. Where all of a sudden he is restored to his people. Klal Yisrael is out of the Golus. The Torah is out of the Golus, out of exile. And Eretz Yisrael is out of exile. And he restores himself to his real attributes. We are his children, he loves us. In other words, it's openly displayed that we are his children, and he loves us, and he's a God of truth. That's the opposite. Therefore, what would that mean? That would mean that what happened in Har Nof would be the reverse, you see. And it occurred to me, which is a tremendous gilui, there's a pasuk that actually is Meramis Har Nof. It's astounding. Let me read you the pasuk. We say this in the Slichas, Zechor Lonu Bris Ovois, at the end, sort of, right before Shema Kolenu. Look at this pasuk. V'havioisem, and I will bring them El Har Kochi, to my holy mountain. V'simachtim, and I will rejoice with them, bebeis tfilosi, in the house of my prayer. Oilos sehem, their oilos, their korbanos, v'zivchehem, and their sacrifices, l'rotzoin al mizbechi, that come on the mizbeach, all of this will be restored. Ki beisi, for my house will be a beis tefillah, yikor l'cholu amim, for all the nations of the world. And which is something also interesting, which we don't realize, that the grief is not only for Klal Yisrael, he grieves for the Goyim, like the Malachim by Kriya Samsov. You know, when they said, when they started singing Shira, famous medrash, and the Baruch said, "What are you singing Shira for?" Yeah, because he was killing the Egyptians by Kriya Samsov. So Baruch said, "It's my siyoti. He is also on my handiwork. I don't grieve. I grieve for them that they were so bad that I had to kill them. But really, do I want to kill Goyim? Of course not. I want Goyim also to be close to me, even if they're not zocheh to be Jews. But they also have a tafkid in the Bria. So the grief is not only for Klal Yisrael, it's for the Goyim also, that they are so far from the emes. And it makes sense. That's my siyodi. And therefore, if you look at this pasuk that I just quoted, right, reverse it. This pasuk speaks about when the Geula will come, but reverse it. Look what it says. V'havioisem el Har Kochi, and I will bring them to my mountain. What happened in Har Nof? It was the reverse, right? It wasn't Har Kochi, it was Har Nof, where the butchery was about to take place. And if you ask yourself, well, how do you know Har Kochi is Har Nof? Because it says in the Yom Sheni, Mizmor Shir Livnei Korach. It's a shir for the children of Korach. Gadol Hashem U'Chulu Mi'od. Great is God, and He is enormously praised. Be'ir Elokeinu, in the city of God, Har Kochai, His holy mountain. Yefei Noif, beauty. Har Nof. Interesting. That's number one. Remember, I'm interpreting the pasuk not in the Geula sense, but in the Chorban sense, right? So, I will bring them to Har Kochi. Right now, I will destroy them on Har Kochi, which is just Yefei Nof, Har Nof. V'simachtem beveis tfilosi, and I will rejoice with them in the house of my prayer. What's a house of prayer? It's a synagogue. Instead of rejoicing in the synagogue, I destroyed in the synagogue. It's mamash what happened. Oyosehem, their oilos, which the korbanos. How many korbanos are oyosehem? 2. V'zivchehem, and their slaughters. How many are there? 2. That's 4 korbanos. Yes? L'rotzen al mizbechi, on my altar. What's the altar about, the mizbeach? It's the avodah, right? When were they slaughtered? In the middle of Shmona Esrei. That's the avodah. Because tefillah b'makom korbanos tiknun. Yes? So this is the opposite, and then kibesi based tefillah. The shul would be a based tefillah, yikol l'chol amim, to all the goyim. And who represents the goyim? That Druze that killed those, that want to kill those 2 Arabs. His pasuk is literally the reverse of Har Nof. It's amazing. Except this pasuk expresses it as what? As a geula, as a redemption. But when you look at the opposite, because the Bosham is now in what? In Golus himself. So what he will redeem has happened in the reverse. A churban has happened on Har Nof. Okay? Where? In based tefillah, in a shul. And there were 4 korbanos. When? In the middle of Shmona Esrei, which is Mizbechi. And not only will they die, but even the Chol Amim, even those nations where that should be also praying the shul, they will also be killed in that shul, and that's the Druze, and so on.
Why is it Maramis to the opposite?
Wait. No, it's not Maramis. No, because this is the pasuk on Gula. This is what we hope. But I'm saying it's astounding that if you look at the reverse of this pasuk, right? Because the Gula, the redemption, is the reversal of the Churban, of the Golus and all that, of the whole process of Yisurin. It's the exact opposite. It's exactly what happened on Har Nof. And like I say, even Har Kochi, my holy mountain, is Yifei Noif. That's what it says in Yom Sheni. Is Har Nof, beautiful Noif, right? Anyway, I thought that was quite a reversal, where the whole thing is merumas in this pasuk, but not when there's a gula, when there's a churban, and that goes back to the Gemara, that the Rebbeinu Shalom, he himself is in Golus, and he has unbelievable grief. So this pasuk can be learned either in the time of Gula or in the time of Churban. So when you look at the time of Gula and you reverse into Churban, the pasuk Churban, it's exactly what happened at Har Nof. Rather strange.
That brings Gula.
Yeah, because that's really ultimately what that is the path of Yisurin. So that brings Gula. Anyway, I thought I would mention that as some of the underpinnings and so on, is that that the greatest grief expressed is not by humans, it's by the Rebbeinu Shalom himself, as we see. And therefore, in a certain sense, we have to shed a tear for God. Sounds strange, but that's the concept of Tikkun Chatzois, is that he is aggrieved infinitely more than everybody that's aggrieved. Family, the Yisomim, community, individuals, Klal Yisrael, everybody. You know, the one who has suffered most from all of this is the Rebbeinu Shalom. That he had to do this in order to do the tikkun. It's a terrible thing. It's like a surgeon, you know. It's like a surgeon who has to operate on his child. He happens to be a surgeon, you know, and his kidney surgery. And he's got to operate on his kid. He's got to open up his gut, right? Could you imagine what he's feeling while he's doing that? Of course, it would never happen. No surgeon is going to operate on his kid or whatever, you know. But could you imagine if it ever did occur, what a surgeon would feel? He's got his kid's guts exposed because he's got to take out a tumor. It's like unbelievable, you know. That's exactly the matzah of the Rebbeinu Shalom. The problem is that the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't he has nobody to hand over the surgery to. You know, he's the only surgeon. But what he's really doing is operating on the guts of his kid. You know, what kind of a grief is that? It's an incalculable kind of grief. That's the mashal that I would say. And therefore that's something for us to keep in perspective. Any questions?
I thought that if we are really that bad that we have to go through the CERN and the gun is even further from him,
Yeah.
and he's grieving, can he lower the bar? Why does he have to play by those rules? And is this experiment or whatever working out, more or less? He valued life unbelievably.
When you say why does he have to operate by that, it's unknown. The Baruch Shem has made a cheshbon that the only way to do the tikkun of this bria is by this kind of what's called tikbar sarah. He has to operate in a way where all of this he's concealed, and it has to go tremendously against his nature.
So why do you think we fall short? We were just talking today, historically, all the things that Jews have gone through in history. We never marauded villages with horns and leather on us and battle axes. We're not that bad of people, so what are we missing?
What are we missing?
Yeah, why are we...
I would venture to say, which I had said previously, in many ways, there are many sins that we do. I mean, Klal Yisrael does do a lot of chatoim, or else why is this all happening? But I think Klal Yisrael has a real problem with achdus. There's always a tremendous amount of sinas chinam. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of that. And not only that, but the Geula doesn't come because of sinas chinam. We know that. And the sister of sinas chinam, of course, is always lashon hara. That's what creates the sin and so on, But I think Klal Yisrael has a real problem with sinas chinam. There's a tremendous amount of what's called purud. Tremendous amount of purud in Klal Yisrael. A tremendous amount of separation. And I told you, one of the problems of Klal Yisrael, unfortunately, I think, among the Charedim, is elitism. They all think they're God's gift to the world. May be true in a certain sense, but that's not how you relate to other people. There's a tremendous amount of sinah, machlokas, among Charedim. And I once said that the main tikkun of the Bria is through Charedim, because they know exactly what the score is. The other people are tinik shenishba, so therefore their culpability and therefore their ability to calculate the Bria is incredibly diminished. So the ones who do the tikkun is the Charedim. So when they have this incredible sense of elitism and machlokas, which of course is then accompanied sinas chinam and then lashon hara, it's bad news, you see. And maybe this is the problem that I don't think they really see. I think some of the wives of these kedoshim spoke about that, But really, it's far greater than we think, and so on. They have to learn their lesson, Just because you're an observant Jew doesn't mean you're greater than the other Jew. What it does mean is it's tragic that he's not doing what he could do. That's true. But you're not greater in essence because of that. On the contrary, it's a tragedy that he doesn't do what he's assigned. But the Klal Yisrael has to get rid of this elitism. And there's a lot of that, machlokas and so on. And a lot of it is in Eretz Yisrael. I don't think you have in America also, but it's not as much. I think America is more tolerant of Jews that are not from or semi-from or whatever. Eretz Yisrael, that's quite a way to go. And I think in a certain sense, although we don't really know for sure, I think this has a lot to do with it. In terms of what's happening there. So I gave a whole share of this a couple of weeks ago. The 3 kids were killed, the war, everything was just to bring back Klal Yisrael, to unify Klal Yisrael. And I see this as part and parcel of the same message. It certainly unified a lot of the Charedim, because it was so close to home and so on. Anyway, that's my take. I don't know.
It just shows how the Hester is.
Yeah.
It's so strong that even the devil not knowing what to fix.
Yeah, I think they suspect what it is. Look, you have to know one thing, and Rab Chaim Kanievsky is correct. Nobody died before their time. What the Baruch Shem decided to use them is for a specific purpose. Of course, they have a tremendous aliyas neshama, because their death brought about a tremendous amount of either tshuva or achdus in Klal Yisrael, but they didn't die before their time. The great tragedy is that this is what has to be done in order to set Klal Yisrael straight. That's the great tragedy. But remember, as I said, the take-home message that the greatest one who grieves for this is God. We think we don't realize that, and that's what that Gemara is really all about. He grieves more than anybody else. That he, as a father, as somebody who loves us, and somebody who represents truth, has to violate all of those three attributes, because it's connected what we see. How does a father do this to his son? How does somebody do this to somebody who loves us? And how does a person of truth do this? But that's what he has to do in order to bring the Yeshua himself. Anyway.